Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, I'm Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. If you've been listening to the podcast recently, you've noticed that I've been talking a lot about rubbish. And the reason why I'm talking about rubbish so much is because I've been looking through the lens of a camera. And there's a lot of rubbish. I just deleted about 1,500 pictures. And maybe there were fence posts and hard disks and lots of pictures of orchids because their orchids are sitting in the middle of our lounge, and so lots and lots of pictures of orchids, and some of Renuka screaming at me, better not be taking my picture when I'm taking the pictures of the orchids. But a lot of them, in fact almost every single picture, has been deleted. And it's not been deleted because I don't like them. It's the rubbish, the stuff that's seemingly not important that leads to you doing some excellent work. So every time that picture is taken, you learn how to take the picture under different conditions, how to move knobs around, how to press specific buttons, you're learning how to create a ton of rubbish. And professionals know this. They know that rubbish is the way to creating great work. It's not what beginners do. It's not what insecure people do. They don't want to present bad work, and so they don't put anything forward. But here is the guy at Pixar, and he's going to introduce himself shortly. And he's going to tell you how he goes about creating the storyline for a Pixar movie.
Before we start, I need to do two things.
Okay, that was the wrong clip, and I thought I'd take it out, but that's the point. The whole point was that when you're creating a good podcast, well, I hope this is a good podcast, then there is some rubbish or some mistakes that are going to happen along the way. So let's finally get to the Pixar guy.
When I started directing Monsters Incorporated, the way I would pitch it is, it's about a monster who scares kids for a living. That's his job. He clocks in, he clocks out, he eats donuts and talks about union dues, and we thought that was a pretty funny idea. And sure enough, when I would tell it to people, they would smile. But when we told the story as a film, people started getting bored and restless, and they're like, I don't understand what this movie is about. One of the big revelations for me telling stories is how much work they are, really. I always thought you'd just tell the story once and it would be perfect, and geniuses like Walt Disney or Miyazaki, this brilliance comes out of their head once and there it is. Well, the truth is, our stories don't always come out exactly perfectly the first time, or the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, up to the 30th time. And so you keep going again and again and again, and only after retelling the story many, many times does it really sparkle.
As you can tell, a lot of that went into the bin, but it didn't go into the bin. All of that is a kind of practice. We won't call it practice, we'll just call it rubbish. Because we're not really trying to get things right, even though we do want to get things right. We do one draft, second draft, third draft, and somewhere along the way, taking all those pictures, doing all those drawings, doing all of those drafts of your book or your article, that rubbish starts to get some value and not only create a great book or article or drawing or music piece, but over time your brain is able to spot the rubbish. For instance, before we got to New Zealand, we never had a flat white. Now, flat white is a type of coffee. If you don't know, it's predominantly supposed to be from New Zealand, from Auckland. And we'd never had that kind of coffee. So we went and we got some instant coffee, like we'd always done. And then from there, we went to another kind of instant coffee, which was Moccona. And then after that, we started going and having these big soup bowls of latte. All the time, we were eliminating the previous one, which was rubbish. Well, like a draft and another draft and another draft. And today, if the coffee is not good, we send it back. I've sent back coffee 4 times. Yes. I'm that client from hell when it comes to coffee. We won't drink the coffee if it's not good. And having all of those hundreds, probably a few thousand cups of coffee, they teach you what is rubbish and then show you what is good. In fact, we have another example here, which is from Ben Zander. He's the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic, and you probably listened to this before, you probably heard this before. It's a very popular TED speech, and yet he's describing what this process of rubbish is all about before we get to the point where it seems like one wonderful piece.
Before we start, I need to do 2 things. One is I want to remind you of what a 7-year-old child sounds like when he plays the piano. Maybe you have this child at home. He sounds something like this. I see some of you recognize this child. Now, if he practices for a year and takes lessons, he's now 8 and he sounds like this. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons, now he's 9. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons, now he's 10. At that point, they usually give up. Now, if you'd waited for 1 more year, you would have heard this. Now, what happened was not maybe what you thought, which was he suddenly became passionate, engaged, involved, got a new teacher, he hit puberty, or whatever it is. What actually happened was the impulses were reduced. You see, the first time he was playing with an impulse on every note. And the second, with an impulse every other note. You can see it by looking at my head. The 9-year-old put an impulse on every 4 notes. And the 10-year-old on every 8 notes. And the 11-year-old 1 impulse on the whole phrase. I don't know how we got into this position.
And he's talking about a completely different position, but that's the position that we find ourselves in. I realized that I hadn't been taking enough pictures of rubbish. That's why my pictures were not as good as they could have been. I'd go on holiday, I'd get my camera out of storage, I'd take pictures on holiday. I'd take 3,000 pictures. It's not like 5 or 10 pictures, 3,000 pictures. And yet, I hadn't been taking all of these everyday pictures that were just random pictures of clocks and fences and more orchids. And I think that's what I wanted to say. So I have said it, and I'm going to stop now. And hopefully you'll create a lot of rubbish, and we can see some good results at the end of it. That's me saying bye for now. Bye-bye.